As we were speaking through things and discussing concepts and all that, the truth surfaces when it's relaxed.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not scripted. You don't have to think about the notes. You don't have to be like, well, what is my message?
Yeah.
No, live the message. If you're living the message earnestly, then that is what will emerge, what will come out. You don't have to think about it. It's just gonna, it's just gonna become
just
what it
flow.
is.
Yeah. Cool. That's how I operate best.
Yeah.
So
nice.
we're here for a reason. This is good. You know, it can be motivating to
That's right.
check in with ourselves and what are those demands or those requirements that we have to get back into ourselves, our physical, all of the aspects of our beings to align and grow, you know? So.
Yeah. And in this climate, we're sweating enough that the inside's coming out.
You got it. You got it. Whether we want it or not, it's flowing.
You're as deeply connected as you possibly can. It was interesting when I was in Panama in the jungles there, you know, you'd be in the jungle and the humidity and everything is so dense that you feel yourself in the air.
Right.
You can feel the connection to everything because it's so saturated. It's so close. The smells, the humidity, the everything.
Sure.
You know, you start to think about like, actually, all of this gaseousness is matter. So you're just swimming in soup. We just call it air and we think that it's nothing. But you're actually directly connected to this. It's not just a breathing thing of in and out. It's like permeating, right? Everything is touching every cell and every organism is all connected.
Cool. Interesting thought train. Yeah, right? I'm going to be swimming in that for a while, forever.
Because then once you are thinking about that and once that has entered your consciousness, it can't never not be there.
No.
Because you're always in it.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Present with each other.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Hanging out in Bangkok.
Hanging out in Bangkok.
The jungles.
Right? Yeah. Just on the outskirts of it too.
This is a great place.
I feel like it's been such a treat to be able to just kind of hunker down, set up shop, set up home for a little bit, outside of the busyness of the city. Like, I come from a rural zone. I typically reside in rural areas as if where my being feels the most at peace, where I can feel Kevin and my alignment and my partners, and just it feels the best for me. But kind of like you were saying too, with those mega cities, with the centers, we need the community there, we need the market there, we need all the access to amenities, and it's super important. But it's equally, or maybe even a little bit more important, that I know where I best resonate, so I can plant the majority of my roots, or at least a number of my roots there, so that consistency, that like heartbeat is always ready for me. It's always providing, it's always circulating throughout. And then I can bring my best version of self to Bangkok or to wherever it might be.
Right.
To then be cool, you know?
Yeah.
Or just know this, okay, I gotta check in, I gotta go out into nature again, hang out in the jungle, get my hands in the dirt, whatever it is.
Because you're at least tuned in, you're tracking your awareness, and you're like, okay, I need to adjust here. And there's a lot of talk in the space about where or what are the solutions, just kind of speaking to the community concepts and people talking about startup cities, startup villages, startup nations, sovereignty. They're like, well, where is the big one going to be, or what's going to be the protocol, or what's going to be the community that is the one that becomes the one that covers the world? It's like, this, as many humans exist, that's the tapestry.
Right.
that's the variety of
Yeah.
what we need to be producing. Because
Yeah.
not only are there different people that have different perspectives and want to live different lives, but people change through the phases in their lives as well.
That's right.
Right? So
That's
the
right.
more variety actually that's out there, the stronger of a network we create for humans, where you have the opportunity to go where you want to go, depending on what phase of life you're in, depending on how you're feeling, depending on whatever's calling you in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's an interesting, and it's probably just maybe egoical, but
Right.
there's this trend constantly that I see of like, hey, we have a solution, and it's been very well thought out. And
Yeah.
we've considered the factors, so we should do this. Like,
Right.
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And what else?
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
All the other things as well.
Yeah. Nice solution. And what are the risks?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what's the entire story?
Right.
Well, let's look at the equation of this solution, to dissect it and to collaborate or to work on it to receive and transmit in that circular fashion again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can move with it. Like
Yeah.
let's be agile. Let's adapt. Let's evolve and let's co-create, so that and let's not worry about perfection either. Right? It's so hard. I'm never going to be perfect. I will hopefully be better tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then the day after, and that iterative process. A friend of mine once was like, gotta enjoy the process.
Right.
And oh my goodness, that is life.
It's the journey.
Yeah, exactly, right? We miss it, we ignore the process, we just try to like, that is where I'm going and that is all I'm focusing on. Man, like just a little tunnel that I live in and all of this beauty and sound and the soup of life.
That's right.
I
The
miss
soup.
out on it, you know?
We'll talk about soup later. I have some fun analogies with that. So we'll get
sweet.
into that. I haven't quite made it too public yet, but we have fun analogies with the soup.
Okay,
and
cool.
potatoes and being the broth.
Nice. That's awesome. That's great.
Right.
That's so great because broth is
Yep.
an incredibly nourishing
That's where the flavor's at,
sustenance.
right?
It is. The flavor, the nourishment, like,
Yeah.
and it's all there. It's sweet.
So give me a little bit more background. Calgary, the Great Tundra,
Yeah,
the Great North,
Yeah.
a little cooler than around here.
a little bit.
What's Fifth World, first of all?
Sure.
You'll land at Fifth World here, but maybe you could just kind of give like a real quick rundown, your path into the Fifth World, connecting and engaging with that and
Sure.
participation there.
Sure, yeah. Fifth World, I guess my path into Fifth World was I took my permaculture design certificate in 2013 and highly recommend a PDC for anybody that's interested in any form of regenerative living, in any form of working with the land, understanding it a little bit better. It's basically like a design system, a framework, you know, that you can lean into and use in any form of your life. So my path into permaculture was led by a man named Rob Avis. And Rob Avis is one of the co-founders of Fifth World. He inspired me in so many different ways. I was in tech industry, so I guess background digression. I was in the tech industry doing software development, mobile application development, software as service, as well as doing like a marketing agency, pieces like this. The hustle and bustle was nuts.
Yeah.
In Calgary, main industry, oil and gas and energy sector. So it was fantastic to get to see all of these different systems and really big industry in a number of different ways. But I needed something that was much more nutrient dense. And I wasn't being fulfilled in the way that I was working. And it was just way too much being thrown at me all the time.
Yeah.
So I decided that it was time to change. I had some really big changes in my personal life, and it just reignited my total passion for learning. So I was taking courses on we were just talking about bone broth. I was taking courses on how to make bone broth, how to get into like making adequate juices, what are like the best ideal like nutrients that I should be taking in myself, all these different pieces. And one of my friends he was like, hey, you should look at the PDC, look at the permaculture design certificate. I looked around, Rob Avis was teaching it in the city I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Went to it, and he's an engineer. So he gave this amazing like framework of how to approach land design, how to think about all of the different systems that are at play here, how they're connected, and what are some of the pieces that you can do with it. So I was just like off to the races. This is so exciting. I was super exhilarated. I've also been affiliated with a number of different nonprofits for a long period of time. And so I started to travel around and implement some of these things. When I did that, I realized I know very little. I've learned how little I know so many times that every day that goes by, it feels like I'm a younger person, maybe a younger intellect with an older body or something like this. And so I started to see like, okay, I do not have all the answers. I don't understand all the system. So I took another PDC in British Columbia. This one was like the pendulum swing to the other side, where I got like a very artistic, kinesthetic, practical approach to permaculture design. And so I saw that, okay, there's like a mosaic, or this is a framework, but also a perspective. And so I was like, I need to go and learn this from a multitude of different people. So I spent some time in Austria at Sepp Holzer's place, Kammerhof. Really tried to learn as much as I could. It was 5 or 6 weeks that I was woofing there with my partner. We got to do a ton of different workshops, how to build dams, how to do like traditional hay baling, just all kinds of different things. It kind of just like one step after the next, kind of just built upon itself and stacked into a realm where I just knew more. I felt more capable. I started to see these patterns align in all of the systems. And in permaculture, we talk about recognition of patterns quite a bit. And so it just led to a point of where I kind of felt like I could do a lot of this stuff. And then it kind of passed that into, I had to start doing this stuff. I'm a motivated individual. I'm a self-starter. I'm not that much of a competitor. I love competitive sports, but I like collaborating, teamwork. That's where I really accelerate. So I started to work.
Got a good storm coming in.
That's good, yeah. So from there, it's like, okay, I need to start doing this stuff and expressing it in all of the different ways in life. Fast forward, a year and a half ago, so this would have been, I guess, 2023, I guess. I was approached to help work on some of the projects that Fifth World was working on. And at the time I was feeling a little resistance, and I had a bunch of things that I was working on. So I respectfully declined. And then I was approached to join and do a little bit more effort there. So I started to really look into it. What's the vision? Started to chat with Rob a little bit, started to chat with some of my now colleagues about it, who were also good friends of mine. And was like, wow, okay, I do love this. I've been involved in Web3 community since 2013, and it really is a decent passion of mine. And so I started to see, okay, I actually am quite aligned with the vision, with the mission here, the direction that we're headed, and the team that's there. And I felt like, wow, I can really collaborate and co-create in this space where it's going to enhance my capacity, enable me to be able to do more things, and really steer us people, and not just people, Earth, all of its beings, all of the flora and fauna, into the direction that I really believed in for life. So it was kind of, the rest was details. Where I ended up kind of settling in Fifth World is the Regenerative Property Design teams. So I work with a number of property designers where we're looking at land, food and water, energy systems, trying to figure out how can we design holistic frameworks and holistic systems for a multitude of different use cases, whether it be for enterprise or for individuals or for communities, to steer them in the right direction that aligns with the context that's appropriate for them, their goals, their values, intentions, and then also within kind of the time frame that they see for themselves, whether they're in the later part of their life and they're trying to set up a legacy for their future generations, or maybe the younger part of their life and they want to do a lot of the self stuff for themselves. So yeah, that's kind of how I fell into stuff with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's get a little bit into like what that, a little bit of nitty gritty about that design stuff.
Okay.
What kind of things are you looking at there? I imagine you're collaborating with architecture, engineering, the actual power, waste treatment. Like what kind of elements are involved in that? And maybe just a couple things that you're thinking about as you're getting into the technical stuff.
Sure.
And just kind of speak on that a little bit and get into like the nitty gritty of if there's a service that's being provided by Fifth World for a project that's trying to work on it.
Yeah.
What's ending up on the table there?
Awesome. It's kind of like so there's a number of different packages in terms of those actual services that are offered. Kind of the starting point is referred to as the regenerative tracker. And this is basically an opportunity report that gives you an understanding of a landscape that you're trying to cultivate for whatever the context is. And maybe a lot of people just have a hard time seeing all the different layers to the total opportunity as well as the total risks that are associated with taking some moves on that space. So we lean into the scale of permanence, or 11 factors of property design, where this is a list of not of what's the most important to the least important, but what's the hardest to change to the easiest to change.
So you're talking about even like reviewing geotech, reviewing soil, reviewing all what, like getting into the actual.
You actually went from the hardest. Geology is the very top of that, and soil is the very bottom of that scale. So exactly, looking at all those different pieces in there. Within there, you've got structures, you've got access, you've got flora, you've got fauna, you've got business, technology, all of these different elements. And it's really important to look at all of these different pieces because that gives you the total, like a very holistic perspective of where you're gonna go, what you can do, what you can't do, and what are your pathways of least resistance. In the answer, like what's the lowest hanging fruit that you can start with, and it's going to help provide what those things are. So in the regenerative tracker package, that's much more of you're looking at all these things and you understand what's the opportunity that can come from it. From there, there's kind of like detailed concept and detailed design. Concept design is really like a napkin sketch, glorified, and you're layering all of that data that you collected from the geography all the way down to soil to then see how do I connect these and layer them over top of each other to start to design a system that becomes more efficient. You look at how many steps you take in a day for your chore list. If you put your kitchen garden on the other side of your property and then you put your chickens on the complete other side of the property, you're going to spend whatever 20, 30, 50 minutes a day. Stack that across the course of a year, you're wasting a lot of steps. But if we bring those systems really close together and we start to design systems like, say, a composting system for chicken, then they can actually interact with each other and be a function of each other. So then we gain efficiencies, those systems both have needs, they both have yields, and then we can combine them together so that it just becomes easier for us to work through. So that concept design is really how do all these things work? And that's actually really easy when it's just a general bubble diagram that's glorified to work out with each other. So we can collaboratively design that with whoever our clients might be to then understand, are we meeting the goal sets? Are we hitting our key performance indicators or our measurable outcomes that we're trying to check off throughout the process. And then once we get to the end of that process, then you can really step into details. So if you're getting into building a food forest, for example, what are all of the 9 or 12 layers of a food forest, from your overstory all the way down to the fungi or the roots that are in the ground? If you're designing a water system, how are you collecting all of the water from the structures of your roof structures, all the way down to leading it to the sink of your property? So do you have a living pool that you're setting up there, or cisterns for hanging onto this for potable or whatever type of water you might be looking at? If it's for energy, how do all these pieces connect together? And that's really the details. And it's nice to be able to make these big decisions in the concept rather than trying to change it when you're in the details.
Yeah.
So it's dynamic. You're not changing massive brush strokes. You're kind of just augmenting the broad strokes that you're putting out there. So that's kind of the details, is really when you're getting into how do all of these goals that you set out, the context of your property, align with the design that we're putting out there. And then from there, once you're completed with that, then we can either do, project management of these things. We'll offer implementation in certain areas, and make sure that these things actually come up into fruition, which is typically a long-term endeavor. And one of the interesting pieces too that a lot of people hope is like, I want to plant this thing and step away, and my garden is set and I'm good to go.
Right.
But what many of us know that like an operations and maintenance schedule is really important. And so that's another subset too, to really be able to help plan out, design that out, and teach people how to do that for themselves, whether that, the landowners or the community members or a land steward, and that someone might bring onto their staff and house in the property to take care of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I guess, a long, short, mid-answer to what we're doing. But
Well, you've pretty much nailed the two things that people think about the least, which is the foundation, the planning, understanding what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And then the post-project completion of the operational maintenance. How do you continue this? Especially in the space that a lot of us are kind of working in, our audience and people in both crypto region spaces.
Right.
A lot of passion about let's make an organic this or a regenerative that, but not really digging into what are you even working with in the first place.
Right.
What's the ground you're working on?
Yeah.
And we also have what I see kind of as a big disconnect coming from the tech side, which is there are quite a few things from tech development that do not carry over into land development. You don't get to fail fast on a waste treatment system.
Yeah.
You don't get to have an iterative process on building a house.
No, not at all.
You can have phased. You can have phased process, right? So you can plan and have phase and stuff.
Yeah.
But you can't, at least not at scale, right? So this is one thing that I think is potentially happening in the maturing process, is people really starting to think about, it's less about just getting a piece of land, show up, start building a cabin and go for it. Right. You can do that at very small scale.
Sure. Yeah.
If we start talking about how do we build regenerative communities, micro communities, or even broader startup cities, it takes a lot. Like, you really have to be thinking about these systems at significant scale, right? Scale is where the issue is.
That's it.
Scaling is the thing that requires the planning and then the execution and the long-term support.
It does.
So I'm curious a little bit, coming from the fifth world perspective, where are you at right now with the sizes of projects that you guys are working on, and where are you guys going as far as the scale of projects that you want to move into and that you see things headed towards?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I love it. So what we're working on now is projects that are, we work at some projects that are in urban centers, a lot of projects that are somewhat rural. The scale of them is kind of like that age-old adage in permaculture, it depends. And so some of them are just, home dwellings in a city.
So mostly residential type of things, or like what's the balance right now?
The balance is, no, it's a good mix actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're working on a good number of residential, a lot of like acreages,
Okay.
where, maybe 10 acres of land, a quarter section, 160 acres of land.
Agriculture then?
No,
Or
well,
what
some
kind
is agriculture, some is just, I just want to have enough food and water
Okay.
and energy for my family, and maybe, invite my parents to come and retire with us, or maybe they want to have enough for their kids and, or whatever that might be. So there's a lot of people that are really looking for setting up that legacy. How can they ensure that their family's going to have clean energy, clean food, clean water, clean structure, living spaces to facilitate everything that it is that they're wanting to do in their lives.
Right.
We also work with educational institutions that are looking at being on the cutting edge of how education can be conducted. So we're working with a group that one of the chefs in this school sent a guy out to go and collect some, I think it was dill from the fridge. He went into the fridge, he collected, came back to him, gave it to the head chef, and he gave him carrots. And at this moment, the chef realized our students don't know what our food is.
Right.
They can't even recognize what it is in its raw fashion. And so,
for the record, the leafy part of the carrots looks slightly like the kind of
does.
someone.
It does. It is. It's
Imagine how many people have never seen the top of a carrot.
Exactly, right? There's a lot. And so it was such a cool thing so they take this problem and there's this the problem is the solution, right? And so they decided, let's actually involve all of the faculty members, kind of the stakeholders, or we're referring to them as interest holders in this project, to explore what are the requirements of this institution and how do we include the vibe, the needs, the goals, the values of all of these different faculties to then create a design that is expressed in a garden that surrounds one of the buildings that's just kind of coming up on completion there. So that's kind of, working for institution, working for enterprise, but a lot of the stuff that we're working with is residential, in slightly rural areas, sometimes quite remote areas, to figure out what is their anti-fragile strategy.
Yeah. It kind of falls into what a lot of us see as the resilience category.
Yeah.
Self-sustaining. Which is a pretty big element of the freedom movement. A lot of the freedom groups that are kind of focused on this.
Right.
That resilience is absolutely critical.
It is.
It's best case scenario, we have massive systemic collapse and you survive. Well, that's worst case scenario. Best case scenario is everything's still fine and you do well. Right?
Right.
You're still being regenerative and sustainable, right?
Yeah.
And it's a win-win.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to get warmer or colder. I have a number of hypotheses. But I can't tell what's going to happen. And so that's that idea of how do we think about all of the edge cases and make sure that there's a space for them in the community. Like you and I, we're different people, and we want to make sure that you're okay and that I'm okay. And if we're both okay and we're both well, we're both great, then we're probably going to show up for each other
That's right.
very great and be able to cultivate a great environment, a great space, a great connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about. I don't think you made it over to this. The Devcon is kind of the center, big exhibition of this, but you come from tech.
Yeah.
You got that background there. Just being here at the DAO Villa and people coming through here. What's your impression so far on the people in the space? What are you getting off of them? You feeling some kind of vibes? What do you feel in the movement and how people are interacting and engaging with the regeneration coming up? We have a lot of people coming from crypto, and they're like, oh, regeneration is an interesting, cool thing. And so they end up showing up at these little meetups and your talk the other day.
Yeah.
What are your vibes on that? I don't like vibes, but vibes are a thing. So what are you feeling about this? Like, what's your sense?
Right. Yeah. Maybe I planted that word in your mind too. I apologize.
It's overused.
It is.
What is your sense of what's happening? Like, this is right. What we're feeling in this movement here.
Yeah. The people have been super activated, incredibly intelligent, and interested to dialogue, debate, collaborate, and mostly and discuss, a vast spectrum of ideas. I feel really opened up as a result of being here to a lot of things that are going on, a lot of people that are doing incredible projects, a lot of things that I don't care about at all, and not to take any discredit to any of those organizations. It's just, it's not my cup of tea, and it's all right. But here we are in Bangkok, the Green Lung. We're kind of just on the southern side of Bangkok. We're a bit far removed. It's pretty challenging to get here.
Yeah.
Traffic access of Bangkok is a big issue. And so it's a little bit of an adventure to come out here. And where we're staying, it feels kind of like we're rural. We're in a farming community. And the more that I've got to know people in the area, it's realizing it's a low income area. And so it feels like it's almost like an agrarian zone. And that's where I feel very comfortable as a being. I feel comfortable in a lot of spaces, but I like it. And so what I'm getting at is that people have really had to want to be in this villa, to be a part of workshops, to be a part of conversations, to be a part of the experience that's being created here. And I'm a contributor of DAO, and so I've really wanted to spend more and more time with Chris and with Yash and with Ben and with a whole bunch of John and all the members that are being a part of this. But I only hang out with them on Discord or voice or video chats, and you get a understanding of who you are from through a screen or on the phone or on text, but we can actually be directly across from a person. My senses are activated and I get a much better understanding of who I'm with. And so the people that have been coming through here have been really cool, really fun, progressive, challenging, but all doing stuff. They want to make stuff happen. They're motivated and they have hope. They have hope that we can get us into a direction that the world needs to go. And past that hope, they're putting in the energy to get there. So I'm actually really grateful for being able to be present here, be able to hold space and create space and co-create that space with other individuals here. And just really excited to see after this event, where all of these connections, how they kind of start to form as a webbing or a community to start to push some of these initiatives forward together.
Nice. That's perfect. Kind of leading into kind of the last question I have that kind of wraps things up a little bit is those people that are showing up, these people that are coming to the table and picking up the shovels and building. What's the message you have for them? What's something you want to leave for them to think about as they're actually activating themselves and going through the struggles?
Yeah.
Sometimes the solitude of building, the challenges that they face, tempered with the excitement. What's a little message you may want to share with anybody out there that's pushing forward and working in this area?
You can do it. Like, to start with, what are our goals, values, and intentions? What is Kevin's goals? What are Josh's goals, values, and intentions? Refine that as much as possible. Revisit that as frequently as possible. Keep it in front of you. Have it on the back screen of your phone. Have that conversation with your family. Look at it together. Know what that is, because that's the foundation. That's the heartbeat of who I am, who you are, what a project is. When we have an understanding of what those goals are, then we can start to look at how to diagnose and analyze something. Once we understand that, start to design something that is conceptual, then visit whatever that project is as deeply as possible, flush out details from there, and in that entire process, keep looking at the goals, keep looking and revisiting all those pieces, but know that putting in that energy is worth it because it's building what we actually need. We can do anything that we put our minds to. I've seen it time and time again in my life. And I'm convinced that I am my biggest limiting factor in this life. And I can overcome that. The more that I try, the more that I push myself, the more I stretch myself, the greater my capacity can be. The better I know myself and my goals and my intentions, the better I can align with all the stuff that I'm doing. And like we talked about just before this started, turn down that signal, turn up that signal, wipe out the noise.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Been
you
great.
too, brother.
Awesome pleasure.
Thanks.